Ok. Olá a todos, meu nome é Dimitris Apostolopoulos e em nome do Areté, o Centro de Estudos Helênico, tenho a satisfação de entrevistar o renomado diretor grego Tassos Boulmetis, responsável por filmes como The Dream Factory, Violotechnia Oniron, 1968, Mythopathy, ou Notias, e a nossa atração no debate apresentado recentemente e foco principal nessa conversa, O Tempero da Vida, Política e Cozinha. Hello, Mr. Boulmetis. It's a great pleasure to host this interview. Thank you for your time here with us.
The pleasure is mine, and I always remember the beautiful time that I had in Sao Paulo and the beautiful hospitality that I was given, both from the members of Greek community, especially from Vasiliki, and of course, Stelios Tsirakis, with whom we have become very good friends.
Great, great. In fact, I'd like to thank Mr. Stelios Tsirakis for making this possible for us today. So let's get to it, okay? Firstly, okay, I'd like to ask you about how is your creative process as a filmmaker, okay, in general, and how was the creative process specifically for Política e Cozinha, given that it is believed to be inspired in your own life?
Well, in general, I would say that I'm a very slow person. I mean, it takes a lot of time to focus on a specific subject, issue, theme, or idea. So it takes a long time for me. That's one of the reasons that I haven't made so many films. Especially for Política e Cozinha, it's very interesting because it was in a period in my life that I was working for the production company, commercial production company, and there was some turbulence between me and my colleagues there, especially with the main producer, the main owner. So I decided to quit from this job. I really didn't know what should I do by that time. So I followed the advice of a friend of mine who said, why don't you take some time and make a trip to Istanbul, to Constantinople, of course.
Yes.
I hope most of the Greeks understand the word Constantinople. I'm sure
yes, of course.
So, I mean, you have been in all over the world and you haven't been in Constantinople the last 30 years, and that was true. I left Constantinople in 1964, and since then, I hadn't been there, and we are speaking about 1994, 30 years.
30 years.
Okay? So I followed this advice. So I decided to go and visit, my motherland. I visited Constantinople. It was just the next day I picked up the plane and I went there, and it was the journey of my life. It was not just a trip, it was a journey. And it was in that journey, actually it was December of 1994, where I decided that I should make a film about my personal story, my personal, to communicate all the feelings that I had, that when I was kid there, what was my relationship with the city, with my parents, with my friends, and how I did experience the separation from this mother city. Yeah. So the project started as an idea in that journey, and it took 8 years to be completed as a script, because during that time, from 1994 until 2002, where the shooting started,
yes.
There were many conflicts between Greece and Turkey. So there were some moments during that decade that I could not imagine making a film in Constantinople because of the turbulence between the two countries. But eventually, we went through a period that things were really calm and relaxed.
A little bit of peace, yes.
And yeah, it was peace. And actually I had a great time. The Turkish crew was amazing, and my Turkish friends and the actors and actresses are great. I mean, amazing, talented people. So it was a very happy experience.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. So based on this, okay, we have some collaborators, okay, some people who are part of the Núcleo de Cinema, as we call it, okay, and one of them is one of the people who is on the debate, which is Aspásia Papazanákis, and she has a question based something quite complementary to what you were telling me just now. Was it a personal dream or a personal need to revisit the past and give meaning to present that led to the movie Politica e Cozinha? Because they're
no, I would say it was a need that eventually became a dream. But it started as a need because I told you that the origin of it was a trauma. It was a bad relationship that I had with some friends, which actually I became very good friends. I mean, everything was solved after that, but it doesn't matter. I mean, thanks to them, I managed to fulfill that film. So it started as a psychological need to go back and search for my roots. Okay. I mean, just to tell you, for people who come from Constantinople, especially, if you don't go very often, you're missing something. I mean, I haven't been to Constantinople the last 5 years, and now I have a very strong need to go and visit again, because it's an amazing feeling to go back in the places and in the playgrounds that I was raised, and I was, I had my education, the first class in the elementary school in Constantinople. So
that's very interesting. I wonder if the people who have, for example, born here in Brazil and left to Greece to stay there, if they share something similar. Perhaps they do, because
probably they do.
Yeah,
probably they do.
Because it's like, it's like the
I meet a lot of people, especially in Los Angeles, where I share my time the last 2 years. So there are many Greek American friends that, after 4-6 months staying in the United States, they're crazy, like, to come back to Greece. Well, of course, during summertime. Yeah. So they share pictures of Greece, and it's amazing. I mean, it's a different feeling, and I'm sure that Brazilian friends have. I mean, Stelios is visiting every year the Greece. I mean, sometimes 2 times per year. So.
Yes. It's quite a remarkable thing. I mean, people of 2 nations and 1 feeling. Let's put it this way, right?
Exactly.
Yes. All right. Great. So let's carry on. About the movie, okay, you previously mentioned it took 8 years as a script and 1 year roughly as production.
Yeah.
Right? How difficult was it to make it happen? And we know that Greece is not a movie factory, just like Brazil, and most places not called United States of America, they have this situation. So how difficult was it to make it happen?
Well, it was quite difficult. I should admit that it was not such difficult, because I was very lucky. I started with a producer who, I mean, everybody who was reading the script, they would fall in love with the script. So, and they were hoping that the film will be equally good as the script, the screenplay. So I started with a producer, and unfortunately, well, at the end, fortunately, he wasn't able to get the money to collect all the funding in order to produce the film. So by that time, actually, it was a period of fake prosperity for Greece. It was just 2 years before the Olympic Games, and we were living with borrowed money. I mean, we were spending lots of money. And we thought that life is gonna be like that, and everything was, you know, borrowed money. So by that time, there was this huge company, Village Roadshow, that it was the mother company of Village Roadshow is from Australia. It's an Australian-based company. So they had a branch here in Greece, and they were doing very good in terms of revenues. So they had a lot of cash and they wanted to invest in a Greek film. So they read several scripts, but they ended up to like A Touch of Spice. So to that degree, I was very, very lucky to be in contact with these people. So,
right place at the right time, right?
Exactly. That was right place, right time. So, I mean, everything that happened through a common friend. I had a friend that she was working in Village Roadshow, so she was the person who was the intermediate, and she was the one who arranged the meetings and the whole deals. Thanks to her, actually. Anyhow, they were very generous. I mean, there were some problems, especially after the shooting ended, but I really don't want to talk about problems. If a project goes that well, you overcome all the difficulties that you have been through. Yeah. And it's better to stay on the good stuff rather, yes, you know, being sarcastic or being bitter about things that maybe they didn't work as you probably wanted, but that's okay. So the film did very, very good, as you probably know. Yeah. And if you want me to share a feeling that I have, because that film, forgive me for saying it will sound a little bit narcissistic. It was a landmark in the Greek film industry for two reasons. The first reason refers to the film community in Greece. The second reason is personal and feeds my ego and my narcissism. I will start from the second one.
Of course.
I mean, every single Greek of diaspora knows that film. So that makes me proud because I'm a Greek of diaspora, okay? Indeed. So for me, it's an amazing feeling to know that most of the people who live in the Greek people, even second and third generation Greek people who live somewhere in the planet, they know my film. So that fits my ego.
Yeah, now, that's quite an accomplishment, actually.
It is actually, it is. But what is also important was the fact that Politiki Cousina, A Touch of Spice, initiated a wave in Greece that for the first time after many decades, private investors decided to invest in the film industry. It was because of that film they said, oh, Greek films could make money, could bring back the money, they are worth investing money. Yes. So, and they started, in many companies, they started investing private money. So the Greek film industry stopped being associated exclusively yes, from the state money, from the state funding, but also new ways of funding they open up for the first time in the Greek film community. And that makes me proud because it is because of Politiki Cousina. It wasn't intentional. I didn't do that. It happened. And that makes me happy, you know.
That's great. That's absolutely great. Greek cinema has always been very independent in terms of like, if we talk about the topic in general, like worldwide perspective of Greek cinema. And sometimes I think it lacks this side, having personality, but at the same time having a commercial side to it, like a financial return. That's actually necessary. You can have great cinema with financial return, and people usually tend to have some prejudice towards this, but that's not true. Countless numbers of amazing movies, they generate both the discussion and the revenue. So that's quite a feature. I do agree that it needs to be praised, and that's awesome, really. Changing a little bit, let's go for the plot. And now I have a question from another collaborator, which is Isabella Callia. And she asks about the correlation between three of the main characters, okay? The uncle, the grandfather, and Fanis. The uncle navigates through the world and experiences all flavors of life, and at the same time seems to have a little voice about it and to be kind of powerless. You know, he's kind of like drifting in some way. The grandfather is a man with very solid roots and beliefs, who's very attached to his own universe. However, he does have a philosophical side, and it's quite knowledgeable. Fanis looks to be right in the middle of these two. So her question is, was all of this planned as part of the storytelling, or did it just happen to be this way because it's the way it happened for you in your personal experience? What would you...
Well, I don't understand the distinction, because both are valid. First of all three characters are real life characters.
Yes.
The uncle was my uncle. Actually, he was not a sailor, he was not a captain, but he was a man of the planet. Unfortunately, he died last year while he was 93, 94 years old. Grandparent was also, a philosopher. He could foresee things that would happen, and he could be proactive in order to protect and educate his grandson how to treat himself if he will be in expulsion, if he will be expelled. In that terms, what the grandfather did, he was always working with subtext, with signs, with hidden meanings. Let me explain. Because he knew that because of the turbulence between the two countries, eventually will come, he was teaching his grandson for the most two elementary things, substances in life that he could meet wherever he would go in the planet, which was the universe and the spices. In every place you go in the planet, you always have to see the universe and have a philosophy about the universe, which he translated that. Yeah. He used the planets as a metaphor for as a life lesson, and also spices, which you find them in every single place in the world. So he wanted to make his grandson to be familiarized and be connected with these two. I mean, they are abstract, but also and very, very real things. Probably you cannot touch the universe, but it's there, and you can recognize and you can explain it, and also you can taste the spices. So that was his philosophy. From the other hand, the grandfather, he always wanted to remind to his friends of the traumas that the Greeks of Turkey had gone through. So every time a major political conflict would take place between Greeks and Turkey, he would send an X-ray showing the trauma that he had, which actually it was originated back in 1922. So he sent X-rays. If you see the film and you see the days that he sent the X-rays, it's 1922, 1942, when we had the Varlik, the huge tax that the Turkish government put on the Orthodox Christians, especially the Greeks.
Yeah.
and Armenians as well, actually to the non-Muslim communities. And also in 1955, when we had the pogrom against the Greek shops and fortunes of the Greeks of Constantinople. So he wanted just to give signs about historical events that he wanted to make them remember the traumas, and he was using his own X-ray.
And was that a thing that actually happened in real life? No.
That's fantasy.
It's a wonderful fantasy, and it's a wonderful thought to have. You know, it's a beautiful metaphor. I'd say it's just something that when you are confronted with this scene, which actually I remember, it's revealed by the uncle. It's the uncle who reveals that to Fanis. And when we are faced with this, it's quite a like, whoa, that makes perfect sense. That does. You know, we were carrying wounds deep inside. You know, it's a great metaphor, if I may say. Yeah, so I guess you've pretty much answered the question. They are complementary to each other, and not actually antagonists. Great. So next question is from Marina Zarvos, and she would like to know what was your inspiration for the soundtrack of the movie. It's such a beautiful, and it flows quite nicely. What was your inspiration for it?
Well, my inspiration was the film. Actually, you should ask the composer what was her inspiration, but it's very interesting.
Yes, for the choice, I mean, of course, yes.
Well, I mean, the inspiration for her was the script, but it was very interesting the way that we worked, because actually I knew Evanthea and her husband, who is actually also a very well-known musician and composer, Panagiotis Kalantzopoulos. They were very good friends of mine. And actually, you know, we're spending a lot of time, and especially I was working a lot with Panagiotis in the commercials industry, because he was writing a lot of music for commercials. So one time we went, a big company, we went a trip to Constantinople. It was the Easter time. And Evanthea came to me and said, I want you to listen some music that I have composed for a TV series that it's coming. I said, okay. I had the earphones, and it was an amazing sound, because Evanthea's father, he had studied in the Patriarchal School of Constantinople. He was a Byzantine chanter, Evanthea's father. So Evanthea had the roots in Byzantine music. So what she gave me to listen for that TV series, it was amazing, and it was very, very close. It was very inspiring for me. So I decided to work with Evanthea and not with Panagiotis. I don't know if that caused any problems, but I don't want to know. But I decided to work, and the way we worked was like this. I briefed her about the project, about my emotions. I gave her to read the script, and I asked her to bring me some melodies just as a reference for the beginning, before even the shooting started, okay? So she was very, very productive, and she brought me like 5 to 6 different melodies. Most of them were beautiful. Those melodies inspired me. Initially, she was inspired by the script and by my briefing. Then I was inspired by her music. And I used that music as a reference to my directing style in several scenes. And then when the film was shot and I started editing, she brought some additional, you know, she started working on some specific melodies on that, on the ones that she had brought already, and some additional ones as well. And that's the way I work with Avanthia. I have done 3 films with her.
Okay, that's great. That's great. A little bit on the history side. I know we previously talked, mentioned this tension, this constant tension between Greece and Turkey, which unfortunately it's also current. So okay, so I'm gonna read this one directly from Táki Cordás, a little bit of the introduction and the question. Okay, so Politiki Cousina shows one of the multiple confrontations between Greece and Turkey, and Cyprus, if you will. Coincidentally, Cyprus is also the center of tensions nowadays. Recently, during the pandemic, we have been having conflicts about gas exploration in the Mediterranean, and consequently territorial disputes between the two nations, once again. Our collaborator, Táki Cordás, he has this question for you. How do you see these conflicts, and do you believe, is there any chance for lasting peace at some point? And if so, under what conditions would you say?
I'm not very optimistic about the second question that you put. I don't have a clear answer because I'm not a diplomat. However, I have studied the Greek-Turkish relationship since the very beginning. You see, the Turkish politics, they, especially with Greece, the confrontation with Greece, it started, it's in the 20th century, they started in 1908, when we had the movement of the Neo-Turks, of the young Turks, as they were called. So these were very educated Turkish students in Paris that they formed this nationalistic group. And actually, that group, it was the one that formulated the new Turkish country, the new Turkish
nation as a
nation. Okay, Kemal Atatürk was one of them. So it was back in 1908 when I would say the screenplay, the script was written between the Greek and Turkish relationship. And that script was followed from the Turkish side very, very effectively through the whole century. So it was not by accident that, first of all, of course, we have the Armenian genocide, and then we have the 1922 exodus from Asia Minor. Of course, there are mistakes of the Greeks. I'm not blaming 100% the Turks that everything, but it was originated. It was the whole idea, especially after the Treaty of Lausanne was agreed back in 1923, the Turks had decided that they want to eliminate all the Greeks from Istanbul, from Constantinople. So they did, there are many historical landmarks, there are many historical, very, very bitter dates for the Greeks of Constantinople, which is 1932, 1942, where we had the, as it has been called, the 20 ages, all non-Muslim young people from Istanbul, they were taken by the Turks in order to bring them to the front up in Russia. And that was a plan in order to exterminate them. And thanks God, because of the Allies, many of them were saved. So there was a plan in order to eliminate the Greek community. And that plan started in 1908, and it keeps going. The problem is Cyprus, in 1955, Cyprus was not considered, the Turks were considered minority, and they didn't have any claim in the island. And now they're trying to impose, in order to have two separate countries, two separate nations, in an island that since antiquity, it was 100% Greek, 95% Greek.
Yes, yes.
Please
It's
excuse,
a
I'm
delicate
trying not
issue.
to be very nationalistic, but of course I'm sharing my thoughts from my own point of view.
Yes, of
But
course.
I think I'm not insulting history.
I, I totally can see that. Even if we look this under the outside in, looking from the outside in, it's very clear that there's a policy, a Turkish policy against non-Turks. They have a very nationalistic, a very close, they have close politics basically. And of course, this leads to tensions and so on and so forth. Just to clarify, do you think at any given point, this can actually eradicate, or this is going to drag on forever, like what happens to Israel and Palestine, or to other nations in the world?
I can't answer. No. Well, for this moment in the history and in what happens, I'm not optimistic.
I can see that. Perhaps not during our lifetime. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe in other generations.
Well, you're younger than me. I mean,
I hope.
for sure, not in my lifetime, but maybe yours.
We never know what tomorrow holds. Maybe, yeah. But well, so let's change this from Turkey to Brazil. Okay, big change actually, entirely different cultures. And recently, you've been to Brazil. As you previously mentioned, making a parallel between Brazil and Greece. Okay, recently you've been to Brazil. And what were your impressions of the country and the cultural aspects of the Greek diaspora? That's part one. Part two is, how does this compare to what's happening to Greece nowadays, or in Greece nowadays, with the Greek people? Okay.
You mean the cultural aspects regarding the Greek community of Brazil in comparison to what's happening in Greece right now?
Exactly. The feelings, the way culture is being held in general. Like, what's
First
your
of all,
impression?
let me share with you. After I visited Sao Paulo to present my film there, and of course I enjoyed the beautiful hospitality that I was given by all of you, I had the chance, which was unexpected, to visit again Brazil in Rio de Janeiro 2 years ago with a basketball team of AEK, where they played in the world final between the Western Hemisphere and the whatever, I don't remember what was it. And actually AEK became world champion by that year. So it was an amazing year. So I've been to Rio as well. This is what I'm trying to say. But of course there,
yes.
I did not have the slightest contact with Greek community at all. The only person I saw from Brazil was Stelios, who was very kind enough and traveled from Sao Paulo to Rio to come and see the games and the final. So first of all, I really have beautiful memories from Brazil, and the treatment that I had from all of you, from Vasiliki, from Stelios, from everybody there. I had the chance to meet the two daughters of Stelios, who took me one night and they gave me a beautiful walk, and they showed me, they took me in some really interesting places. I mean, that was the only night that I had real contact with the Brazilian culture. It was very, very good experience. So, Sofia and Katerina. Okay. Now, well, in every place, I've been traveling a lot with my films. I was really lucky. In every place I go, I'm always invited by Greeks, of course, by Greek associations. And of course, there is this feeling of nostalgia that they all have. It happened that when I came to Sao Paulo, I think it was a Greek celebration week. So, there were the dancings, for me, they are very familiar. Similar things happen in the Greeks of LA, the Greeks of New York, the Greeks in France, the Greeks in Germany. You know, these are the Greeks of diaspora. And of course, all the Greeks who live outside Greece, they have very positive feelings. And they are not, if you permit me to say, they are not intoxicated like we are here, the Greeks who live in Athens, in Greece in general, because we are very much influenced by the political turbulence and the huge political conflict that exists now. And our lives, especially now in the pandemic, are intoxicated a lot. And usually I don't see that to be taking place in the Greeks of diaspora, wherever I go. They think of Greece as an ideal, as a dream. And that's beautiful. I like it and I enjoy it. I don't know if I answer your question. I don't know.
You have, yes.
I don't know if you expect me to give you a philosophical answer on that.
No, that's it.
I don't know how to compare. I mean, you know, thanks to the traveling the last 30 years, I mean, people now can travel. I mean, almost every Greek who, even, you know, middle class or even lower class people have the ability to travel at least once per year and visit Greece. So, you know, distances have been now shorter because of the travel frequency that we can enjoy. And, you know, when they come here, they become Greeks. When they go there, the problem with the Greeks, and it happened to me as well, is that we live with one foot in one country and another foot in the other country. And if we are in this country, we miss the other one. And when we move to the other one, we miss the other one. And that's a schizophrenic feeling that we do have. And, you know, it's good because it concerns feelings, but at the same time, I mean, you're not reconciled with your reality, both in time and space. I mean, you live somewhere else always. That's you know, that's a curse that the Greeks have. I mean, they always live in another ideal space and time.
However, if I may add, isn't this a feeling that has always been a Greek feeling? Because
I think so.
When you look at the course of history, maybe it's part of being Greek.
Of course, of course.
It's crazy to think about it this way, but
of course. Well, it's been mentioned in ancient tragedies many times. I mean, you know, exactly. Of course.
I have a cousin, and she mentions, who lives in Athens, and she mentions that when she comes here, it's like, of course, only when she's in, you know, among the Greek community. She mentions that it's like looking at Greece 40, 50 years ago. It's like it's frozen in time. The music,
actually, well, I would agree with your cousin, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with your cousin. And I mean, you can see people so well educated. I mean, in Brazil, but also in the United States, so well educated, so much up to date in terms of technology, in terms of reading, and in terms of information. But I'm talking about the Greek Americans, okay?
Of course.
But at the same time, the idea that they have in Greece, it's very, very outdated. I mean, they live in another decade in Greece.
Yes, it's
although they are visiting Greece. Excuse me?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Or when Greeks visit those countries, either America, or Australia, Brazil, and relive things that nowadays are not so much cultivated in Greece, like breaking plates and things like that, which for a number of reasons they became old traditions and no longer current things. That's quite interesting. The next one, it's about Latin America cinema. So let's go back to cinema here. And what do you know about Brazilian cinema? And are you familiar with any particular movies? Well, basically, what do you think of it? If you do have...
Well, let me tell you, when I was studying at UCLA, that was back in the early 80s, I took a class which was called Third World Cinema. Actually, it was taught by an Ethiopian teacher, a great guy. Unfortunately, he passed away 5-10 years ago. His name was Teshome Gabriel. So in that class, I had the chance to see a lot of third world films, and especially Latin American films. To be honest, from new Brazilian cinema, I don't remember titles and directors, but I have seen all this, what was the name? The Kids of God, the People of God.
The City of God.
The City of God, which takes place in the favelas, I think.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, of course, I've seen these films. And from the old Brazilian films, I remember Antonio das Mortes, if that makes sense to you. Have you heard that film?
Yeah.
Antonio das Mortes?
It does. I don't have a direct recollection. I would have to
But anyhow,
research a bit. Yeah.
I have seen many Latin American films. They were not all of them Brazilian. And I love Argentinian filmmaking. I have felt in love with Buenos Aires. Actually, I was a tango dancer. I mean, not professional, obviously.
Oh, of course. So that's nice.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So there were some years that I would go to at least two times per year. I would go to Buenos Aires and dance the tango. And I have felt in love with Argentina, and it's an amazing country as well. So hopefully whenever all this thing with the pandemic ends, I will be visiting again Sao Paulo just to see you and say hello, and then fly to Argentina as well.
That's
and
great.
Yeah.
That's great. You'll be more than welcome here too.
Thank you. And also, what is interesting also is the fact that last year, I started teaching a class at the University of California at Los Angeles, which is the school that I finished. I studied, UCLA.
Yes.
Which is a very interesting class because it refers to the relationship between Greek antiquity and contemporary film genres. How the ancient Greek literature has influenced both thematically but also structurally, how it has influenced the contemporary cinema. So I will very much be interested to give that lectures in other countries as well. And so hopefully I'll try to have a contact with a Brazilian university or an Argentinian university in order to spend 1 month there and teach that class as a seminar.
Wow, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
You mention it, and I see it everywhere, and I see it in pretty much all kinds of cinema. Especially, let's put it this way, Steven Spielberg depicts a cinema that it's pretty much the journey of, it's the Odyssey. Every Steven Spielberg movie is an Odyssey.
I mean, now I'm teaching, I'm giving seminars in some students through Zoom, of course.
Yes.
And I tell them that every year they should be reading at least one time the Odyssey and Oedipus Rex, because those are the most profound archetypal works of art of Western civilization.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
Especially Odyssey is an amazing, I mean, every time you read it, you discover, amazing hidden and profound ethical, issues, meanings, subtexts, symbols.
Yes. I do agree. It's fantastic. Taking this lead and talking a little bit about Greek cinema now. Okay. Mm-hmm. Nowadays we have a new wave, of Greek cinema. One that has been labeled as the strange or weird kind of cinema, mostly led by Yorgos Lanthimos. And it's the, let's put it, the new wave. However, how do you see Greek cinema in general, the productions nowadays, and also this this new wave? How do you see what's happening now? If you were to give an overview.
Well, let me give you a brief summary on that. It happens that the next 10 days, I have to watch 16 Greek films because it is the period that we were watching the production of last year's production in order to vote for the Hellenic Greek Academy, for the Hellenic Film Academy. Every year, we have a production of between 16 and 20 feature-length films. We have many, many documentaries, and the production value and the themes in most of these films are amazing. Unfortunately, only 2 or 3 statistically every year go outside the borders of Greece. And the ones that they remain inside, they don't make any profit, and they don't have the chance to be screened in big screens. Either the topics are, they don't attract the audience for some reason, but the production value and the quality of the production, there are some magnificent films. But you see, filmmaking, there is no recipe in order to have a success. Nobody has a recipe. I have a recipe which you cannot fulfill it. You cannot have it always, because it's something that you discover that it exists after the film has been made, and it shows if it was a successful or not. What I say is that the only recipe that I could say that exists in order for a film to be successful, if you pick a theme and the visual treatment of this theme, and you make the local, you make it universal. If you speak about your own psyche, your own neighbor, your own neighborhood, your own community, your own country, themes that you know very well, and if you treat them in a way that reflects similar emotions to the citizen, any citizen of the planet, then it becomes universal. And that's the only recipe that I could see that you can apply. If the local, if the personal, you have, this is what happens with Politiki Cuisina.
Yeah.
You see, I have a story to share, and I'm not talking about the Greek audiences also. I'm talking about international audiences.
Yes.
Politiki Cuisina was very successful in all countries. In contrary, Notias, mythopathy, it was not successful at all outside of Greece, because nobody knew, nobody was familiar with how was the Greek society during the 70s. And there are things that they look very surreal in that film. I mean, there are students voting what kind of lens they should put on a camera, because everything was, syndicated, oriented.
Yeah.
So people cannot understand that. They don't see that they don't see the sarcasm and the humor in it. So Notias and mythopathy didn't communicate outside Greece. And in Greece, it became very, very successful on an audience which was 50 plus, because they had the experience, because they knew that period of time. In younger ages, they don't get it. They don't understand even. I mean, they don't communicate with the film.
Yeah.
That was a lesson for me. In A Touch of Spice, I was in, when the film came out in Buenos Aires, I happened to be there, not because of the film, because for other reasons. So I was invited in the house of a friend of mine in Argentina, and she introduced me to her friends. And she said, Tassos is the director of the film La Sal de la Vida, was the title of the film,
Mm.
and which is playing now in Buenos Aires. So one of her friends, she said, "Oh, everybody's talking about this film. I'm gonna go and see it." And another friend said, "Wait a second, are you telling me about that Greek film, which my grandmother called me from Patagonia and asked me to go and see it because she loved it?"
There was a buzz in the community, right? Yes.
So, well, she was not Greek. Probably she was a native Indian, you know, an old lady from Patagonia. She saw a Greek film and she was moved. And she called her granddaughter in Buenos Aires and said, "Listen, there is a good film, go and see it." That's the local becomes universal. That's the only recipe I can share. But I cannot do it again. I mean, it's not something, I mean, it's not that easy.
No, but maybe, who knows?
Oh, you never know, of course. I'm not pessimistic on that. But
yes.
No, I'm very happy with what I have done so far.
And how about, of course, there are few household names internationally held in the community of cinema, Telangilopoulos and few others. How do you think their cinema compares to what's happening today, past versus present? Because there is an enormous difference when you sit and watch, at least from my perspective, it's an entirely different atmosphere. How do you see this difference between
Let me tell you, there are two filmmakers that I very much respect and I admire. One of them is, of course, Michael Kakoyannis, okay, who was a filmmaker of Greek origin. He was a Cypriot, Greek Cypriot, but he was internationally acknowledged filmmaker. And not only because of that, because his storytelling was so international and so Greek. I mean, this is what I was telling you before. The local became universal. Zorba the Greek. I mean, you know, it's in a small island in the planet. I mean, in Creta, you have a man who becomes a symbol in all over the planet. Also, I'm a big fan of Yorgos Lanthimos, not because I make similar films, and it's not the cinema that I always run to see, but I respect very much what he does. He managed to be welcome in the international film community. I do know that every single star in Hollywood, they are pushing their agents to take part in the next film of Lanthimos. Actually, I happen to know Lanthimos since he started his career in the Greek advertising industry, and he was directing commercials, and he was heretic. He was an amazing visualizer, and these strange worlds, this dystopia that he's presenting in his films, it was part of his theme, both visually and in terms of themes. So I very much respect and I admire what he has done. I think Angelopoulos is a little bit outdated. Angelopoulos was very popular in the festivals. And he didn't have an audience like Kakoyannis and Lanthimos have.
Yes.
He had a very good audience in the festivals. Of course, Angelopoulos was also a great visualizer, and also he was an intellectual, a thinker, but his films were only made for the festivals.
I get the feeling. It's what we call in the cinema academic universe an academic film. It's great for analysis, not quite as much entertaining. It does raise a debate, but at the same time, other issues press for more of an analysis of the how than the what. Let's put it this way. I can see that in Telangilopoulos. Quite interesting. Okay, we are reaching an end. I cannot hold you for so much longer, although it's precious time. So last but not least, talking about your own future plans and projects? Is there anything on the horizon we should be excited about? Something that is...
Well, not yet. Actually, I think I have found what's going to be my theme of my next project, and I started doing some research and some, some research, some taking notes. I'm not ready to share it,
of course,
because I'm still, in a situation that it's very, very, abstract. So I'm working on that.
Yes.
Excuse me?
You're on the creation process, basically.
I'm in the creation process. Well, I cannot promise you, nobody can promise you that you're going to be excited, but, I always try to make my films to have that recipe that I told you. I want to be, I want my themes to be personal themes that I know, and to treat them in a way that that they reflect something in the emotions of the spectators, especially international spectators. You cannot have it all the time,
Yes, no, I totally understand. Wow, that's great. That's great. Well, so unless...
Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions? Anything you would like to ask?
No. I want you please to transfer my love and my greetings to all the members of Areté, all my friends, that they were so kind for me. I really have images and tastes and smells in my, inside from Sao Paulo. The only negative thing that I realized there was I had to go to the airport in 4 hours. That was the only thing that I don't know if things have changed. Please transfer my greetings to all of you. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'm honored that I can share my thoughts with... I really admire the work that Areté is doing. It's an amazing thing that you're doing. And also, I mean, a couple, 2 or 3 times per year, I take phone calls from Stelios, who is asking me to find special books on ancient Greek literature, and he wants... It's an amazing thing. And listen, I'm here for you. If I can do anything for you, feel free to ask me and to contact me. I'm part of your community.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And we love to have you as part of our community. So once again, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And I hope we get to meet again, to talk again in the near future. And when you do come to Brazil, make sure to call us, because we will all be there.
I will certainly do that.
To host you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Okay. Bye-bye.